What is a highly sensitive person, HSP? Are you a highly sensitive person? Or just a little excitable sometimes? What does it mean to be an HSP? What does it mean if I am one of the 15% to 20% of humans with this characteristic? If you're wondering if you or someone you know checks all the boxes for an HSP designation, we're here to help. Here is a bare-bones crash course on what many psychologists believe is a highly evolved personality trait. HSPs have sensory processing sensitivity. Sensory processing sensitivity means that a highly sensitive person's senses are very good at what they do. While most of us were taught that we have 5 senses, that might be the tip of the iceberg. Neuroscientists, psychologists, and some philosophers believe humans could have anywhere from 22 to 33 different senses. These include chronoception, our sense of the passage of time, and equilibrioception, the sense of balance. The highly sensitive person can be viewed as having superhuman abilities to some extent. This individual will show greater responsiveness to certain sensory inputs. Some of their senses, but not all of them, may be more finely tuned than in most people. Is ESP the same as HSP? ESP stands for extrasensory perception. Hollywood has glorified this trait so that we think someone with ESP can read minds. That's not at all true. Nicknamed the sixth sense, ESP is similar to sensory processing sensitivity. It may seem like magic or some paranormal ability because a person's sensory system is better than others, and this can give them valuable insight that most people don't have. HSPs display extrasensory perception. Their senses are extra powerful to some degree. Again, this doesn't necessarily mean a person enjoys enhanced perception across all senses. If I am an HSP, what does that mean for me? The highly sensitive person can sometimes experience deep reactions or emotions to a situation where most people don't respond that way. Additionally, highly sensitive individuals react more intensely to negative situations or circumstances. If you are highly sensitive, you might be more aware of your environment and what's happening around you. You may be able to perceive the emotions and thought processes of others. While this can be beneficial in some situations, it can lead to overstimulation. How can you test for the HSP trait? The Highly Sensitive Person Scale is a self-test that measures your level of sensitivity. This free test can be found online. Don't be concerned if it reveals that you may be highly sensitive. This is a trait or characteristic like any other, such as blue eyes or black hair. It would help if you understood that this is not a medical diagnosis. Being highly sensitive is not a disorder. It only means that in some way, your senses are highly responsive to the world you experience. Knowing this helps you understand why you may feel overstimulated by some experiences that are otherwise commonplace and unremarkable to others. Coping as a highly sensitive person. The good news. Overexposure to negative stimuli can irritate anybody. You don't have to be a highly sensitive person to have a bad day because you keep having negative experiences. The highly sensitive person, HSP, has a much more finely tuned sensory profile. That means that one or more senses are more likely to be stimulated by a particular experience. For instance, do you know anyone who always complains that they are too hot? When you and others think the temperature in a room or outside is enjoyable, that person might be hot. This leads to a negative emotional response. They become grumpy and agitated. The HSP that is highly tuned to emotions and feelings can become overwhelmed in a public setting. These empaths experience the emotions that others are experiencing. This often happens without any interaction other than looking at a person or hearing them talk. The highly sensitive person can absorb those feelings if the individual in question is having a rough time emotionally. While the experience of highly sensitive people is often negative and linked to an emotional response, the news isn't always bad. If one of your senses has superpower status, that can be very good. The upside of being highly sensitive. Antoinette Morano is known as the nose at her workplace. To say that she has a highly sensitive nose is putting it mildly. Her sense of smell is so developed that she works as a sensory technologist. If you have a similar nose and your sense of smell is exceptional, you can earn a very good income with this highly sensitive ability. A high level of emotional sensitivity can enrich your relationships. You don't have difficulty understanding why your friends and loved ones act like they do. It's easy for you to sympathize and empathize with others. This advanced level of emotional awareness can improve your relationships with others and boost your self-awareness and self-appreciation. A higher than normal level of sensitivity means that you see things others don't. Maybe it's easy for you to find beauty in just about anything. That is a wonderful reality. Highly sensitive people sometimes have the ability to read a room quickly. They can sense the overall mood of the people in a room. It just comes to them. That powerfully positive trait can help the HSP act accordingly. If you are highly sensitive, embrace it. If you find yourself experiencing dramatic responses to stimuli, get in that experience. Understand this is who you are. Then, look at the wonderfully positive side of being highly sensitive. This is not a mental disorder or diagnosis. It's who you are. A unique and wonderful person whose senses are better than most at processing your environment. 5 coping questions the highly sensitive person can ask when emotions run high. Self-talk is powerful. It can lead to a wonderful life or self-doubt, a poor self-image, and lots of regret. What you consistently tell yourself programs your subconscious toward that reality. Before you know it, your positive or negative conversations with yourself lead to those kinds of experiences. The highly sensitive person can use this natural law to their advantage. Ask yourself the following 5 questions when you are emotionally overwhelmed and overstimulated. 1. What evidence do I have that what I believe is actually true? When your senses are usually on high alert, it might seem like an alarm goes off several times throughout the day. If this happens, ask yourself if there is any evidence that your chronic anxiety is the right response. Are your beliefs true, or are you possibly making a mountain out of a molehill? 2. Am I totally sure that a result is going to be negative? Sensitive people often see a possible catastrophe rather than a wonderful outcome. Who's to say that the experience you are stressed out about has to produce a negative result? Why can't everything turn out well? Believe in a potentially good outcome and you have a better chance of making that happen. 3. What would I tell someone I care about if they were going through the same thinking process I am? This pulls your emotions out and gets you looking at them objectively. Treat yourself as you would a loved one. Say and do what is needed to calm yourself down and help you make a decision that isn't based entirely on emotions. 4. Am I taking the blame for something that isn't my fault? Highly sensitive people feel so much pain. They feel the emotions of others very intensely as if they were their own. This empathetic nature might have you blaming yourself for things you couldn't influence. Don't blame yourself for outcomes or experiences you couldn't control. 5. If something bad happens, what are some ways I can cope with the outcome? As we just said, you can't always control or influence an outcome, but you can certainly prepare for it. Look for ways to cope with a negative experience before dealing with it. Remember, self-talk is powerful. The things you ask yourself influence your experience. These 5 questions can help the highly sensitive person cope when their senses are overstimulated and their emotional response is exaggerated. Coping with rejection as a highly sensitive person. The word no can be terrifying to a highly sensitive person. It can be seen as a sign that they are not as good as others. This can cause them to think they'll never fit in and that no matter how hard they try, they don't deserve good things to happen to them. That's the power that rejection has for some sensitive people. They incorrectly see a simple rejection or negative experience as a statement of who they are. This can lead to many damaging behaviors. Don't let this happen to you. Here are a few things you can do to cope with rejection as a highly sensitive person. Don't expect rejection. We all have a tendency to create self-fulfilling prophecies. This isn't just the case for highly sensitive people. Your subconscious thoughts can create your reality by driving your behavior. You expect something bad to happen. You obsess over it. The event hasn't been experienced yet, but you are certain the outcome will be terrible. You are setting your highly sensitive brain and central nervous system up for failure. By the time you are in the experience, you have very little chance for an enjoyable outcome. Don't expect rejection. Expect a good resolution and a positive experience. Embrace being highly sensitive instead of seeing it as a negative trait. No one likes to be rejected. This is a negative experience that can trigger painful emotions. For a highly sensitive person, it can be devastating. To minimize the reaction to rejection, embrace who you are. Celebrate those times when your highly evolved senses deliver a positive outcome. Believing that this trait is positive rather than negative leads to wonderful results. It improves the odds that you will have more positive than negative experiences. We see more of what we expect to see, and that means positive thinking leads to more positive results. The second thing it does is minimize your response to rejection. You tell yourself everything's okay and that your highly sensitive system will recover quickly. Don't hide your emotions. You are unique and beautiful. All people are. You should celebrate who you are every day. That means if you have a strong emotional response to rejection, don't try and hide it. Let it have its moment in the sun. Bottling up your emotions can increase your sensitivity to rejection. You don't want others to see how it affects you. This could cause you to withdraw from society. You don't want to get out and about because you are concerned that if you experience rejection, you will be ostracized because of your emotional response. We are different from each other in so many wonderful ways. No two people will respond the same way to most experiences, including rejection. Don't run from your emotions when life doesn't turn out as planned. Let the emotions out, and tell yourself that a positive experience is just around the corner. Coping as an HSP on social media. Highly sensitive people can have a tough time on social media sites. Studies tell us that regular social media use can lead to negative emotions such as anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. That's true with all of us, especially with the highly sensitive person. It is believed that as much as 20% of the global population is highly sensitive. This means that spending time on websites like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok can be a very negative experience for many people. Highly sensitive people don't always respond to positive situations in an above-average way. This character trait often triggers a negative emotional response to some sensory input. A bad situation might concern most people, but the HSP has a much more difficult time with it. The response is greater because that person's sensory radar is stronger and more capable. Why are you so sensitive? Do people ever tell you this on social media? Do they frequently remark that you get your feelings hurt too easily? It might just be that you are more sensitive than most. There's nothing wrong with that. It means your senses are highly attuned and in good working order. It also means you might have to cope with a negative emotional response to social media more than the average person. If people often say you overreact to situations on social media, don't take that as a negative sign. It's simply the way you are. Some people are born to grow tall, while others are shorter than average. Blue eyes and blonde hair are character traits, just as a high level of sensitivity is. It only means that social media might trigger negative emotional responses like anger, jealousy, or sadness. Since only about 2 out of every 10 people worldwide is highly sensitive, people might tell you that your response is overly dramatic. When you get this feedback continuously, remember that social media can be very judgmental. Don't let it bother you. What you can do to cope with this situation is to spend less time online. Unplug to cope as a highly sensitive person. You've probably heard that spending too much time online can harm your mental and emotional health. It can also wreck your physical body. There are many reasons why unplugging from consumer electronics and the internet is a healthy idea from time to time. For the highly sensitive person, it might be even more important for mental and emotional well-being. Social media can expose you to hundreds if not thousands of images, words, videos, and audio input in a very short period. As a highly sensitive person, this can overwhelm and overstimulate you. The experience is especially intense for highly sensitive people. Set time limits for internet usage. Don't automatically pick up your phone whenever you have a couple of minutes of free time. Limiting your exposure to social media as a highly sensitive person can give your senses a rest. It can also improve your mental and emotional outlook, and that's a good thing.